Hey everyone, welcome once more to Get Indie Gaming, where in this video, I'm having a look at some of the best indie games you can pick up and play right now, as this video airs for free, so you can while away the stresses of daily life without spending a penny. Depending on how well this video does, I may look to do more of these freebie rundowns in the future, so please let me know what you think down in the comments. At number 10 and free for a limited time period, and I'll be honest, I've not been able to see when it goes back for you having to pay for it, Monument Valley 2 is free by way of the Apple App Store. In this sequel to the original App Store Game of the Year from 2014, in this one you guide a mother and her child around the map, all within colourful vignettes, and take on sublime and reflective puzzles. Its use of the touchscreen to navigate and solve the tasks ahead of you is perfectly intuitive, and as a standalone story, well, it's oozing with charm, and it's one of the best games you can play on an iPhone today, even though it came out all the way back in the summer of 2017. Let's continue at number 9 with the Prologue of Backbone, which can be found for free by way of its homepage on Steam. I've played through this one I'd say around 5 or 6 times, and while I featured it here a few times on the channel, I feel it's well worthy of more people getting hold of it, and since it's free, it naturally fits into this video rather well. I really like its film noir inspirations and how it's all undergone a number of changes all over the years that I've been looking at it. The artwork, particularly the dynamic lighting and weather effects such as the fog and water systems, are almost pixel art perfection, as is the original jazz soundtrack that fits so well within the carefully created, seedy overall atmosphere of the game. As for what you do, well, it's a point-and-click detective adventure with some superbly scripted branching storylines where you play as Howard Lothar, who happens to be a raccoon. Expected, we think, onto PC and perhaps other platforms in 2021, as far as demos go, this is grade A material. Up next, and at number 8, well, you've got to be fairly quick on this one, as it's only free via the Epic Games Store until the end of April the 9th, the day after this video goes out. Hob first came out in September of 2017, and apart from looking rather special with its colourful art style, what it did so well back then, as it still does today, is how well it told a deeply narrative tale without using any words. I've touched upon this elsewhere, and it's picking a bare bone, as it were, although it kind of feels like a shame the game reverts to text-based upgrade systems for your character. It would have been awesome for this system to use visual prompts or suggestions, which would have been more in keeping with everything else that's going on, although for a small little grumble, that's really all I've got here. As for what makes it worth playing, well, the puzzles are fine enough. You have to navigate about the place, you know, looking for switches to press, blocks to push, and all the usual things you tend to find in such environmental-based gameplay. The combat is also really good fun, and really easy to get into, with some of the enemies being fairly decent in the challenge department, particularly early on before you get to upgrade your abilities. So yes, if you're able and there's still time, head on over to the Epic Games Store and grab yourself a piece of Hob for free before it's too late. Up now at number 7 we have a superbly short little game of only between 20 to 30 minutes, where you play as Mrs. Appleton, the aging proprietor of a small dockside eatery that's famous for a special sauce that covers all of the items on the menu. Now, any further discussion on this would be super spoilery, so I'll leave it there. The puzzles, however, aren't overly taxing, and the short journey comes with a delightful payoff at the end. I'd have happily paid good money for the supper, and the fact it's usually free and there isn't a promo is, to me at least, a mystery. You can pick up the supper on Steam or via itch.io. At number 6, and caveated with many a warning. Now, if by some chance you haven't heard of it, Doki Literature Club is nothing like this trailer would suggest. Sure, it looks like a dating sim, although this free-to-play game is one of the most visceral psychological horror games I've seen in the past couple of years. And while it takes a little while to get going, its writing in places is genuinely terrifying. In all honesty, heed the warnings you're presented with at the start of the game if you do pick this one up, as it has a real ability to mess with your head. While it does use traditional horror techniques such as jump scares, and when the twist comes though, it totally shifts the needle on the perception you have as a player in terms of your ability to control what's going on within the game, or where things might end up. As I keep saying, this is in places a genuinely frightening experience that some of you may enjoy, although please, as I've already said, heed the warnings as they're not messing about. Up next and at number 5, another super short game that does way more in its time than you might reasonably expect given how it looks. It's also somewhat of a refreshing step change from the previous game and has you, yes, looking for 36 apples within an orchard. You'll get the most out of this 30 or so minute bite-sized adventure if you explore the secret paths and hidden areas of the orchard. This is a half pint size of loveliness. It's free on Steam and itch.io, and in the latter you're able to pay for this what you wish. Moving on, and at number 4, we have the free-to-play Prologue to Unbound Worlds Apart. Now this launched towards the end of March, and just look at it. It's gorgeous, and I dearly love how all the hand-drawn artwork kind of looks, and the characters and backgrounds are exquisite. The story is another cracker at play, with the demo giving a really great insight into what's going on, with it offering plenty gameplay to experience where the game's going with its Metroidvania elements. Much of the charm comes from the puzzle sections where, like Dark, it uses inverse physics to change how you might need to interact with the environment, and like all games of this type, you may not be able to solve things first time round when you come across a given puzzle, although once you've upgraded your skill set, you may very well be able to do so. So yes, if you're looking for something that's stunning to look at, has a decent combat and challenging puzzles, then go pick up the Prologue to Unbound Worlds Apart, which can be found on Steam with the full launch expected pretty soon. Coming next at number 3, and from the studio here in the Netherlands that brought us Nuclear Throne and Lufttrousers, Super Crate Box is free to pick up right now on Steam. It's all reasonably simple enough in as much as you have a single screen shooter. Enemies fall from above and then move along the platforms before dropping into the pit at the bottom of the screen, and having done so, well, they come back at you again in a slightly more moody mood. Naturally enough, you're looking to blast these critters away, also while collecting the crates that drop at random times, which replace your weapon with sometimes something useful, or sometimes not so useful, which means you're constantly having to adjust the playstyle to match. I often say, possibly too much, that I like my games fast and frantic, and yes, Super Crate Box hits that high note exceptionally. And what's more, this game's over 10 years old, and it still feels super fresh with it recently having been ported onto the Switch. Now this one is truly excellent, and right now, well, it's free. As with all the other games here, you can find a link to this down in the description. At number 2, and free to play via the official website, Spelunkey is one of the best rogue type of games ever made. I simply adore it, and while I'm so excited there is a sequel on the way at some point, I honestly do come back and play the original from time to time. Pretty much without fail, I'll have a great time of doing so, with the procedurally generated levels just giving huge amounts of replay even after all this time. Let's not forget, this game first came out in 2008, and it was arguably, definitely, way ahead of its time. It's also still as funny today as it was back then, and manages to do funny in a video game as well, if not better than many others. I just still adore this game, and while I pen this little script, there's only one free game you can get right now I'd rather recommend. The number 1 free game as this video airs I would advocate above all of the others in this list, well, that would be The Awesome Adventures of Captain Spirit. With it being a little chaser for the game you may already know as Life is Strange 2, albeit with a story about everyday tragedy. So, kind of like the same as Life is Strange 2. Here you play as Chris, a boy whose imagination gives him imaginary powers such as super strength, superb bravery and telekinesis, which may or may not be imaginary. So why is this here at number 1? Well, it's not perfect. There are scenes touching on alcoholism that are in places heavy-handed and overdone, and in certain sections the voice acting now and again goes a little bit dry, although what it does really well is tell a highly emotive tale that's so very memorable and able to punch you right in the gut, and at times, particularly in the first couple of hours, manage to get an emotional rise out of me that's long-lasting. And even today, some 2.5 years since I first played it, I can easily put myself back into that same state of feeling. So yes, The Awesome Adventures of Captain Spirit is superb, and it's free right now via Steam. So there we go, that's it. Please let me know what you think of these selections down in the comments. Don't forget to tickle that like button and subscribe to the channel. With almost daily indie game uploads, a subscription is the best way of staying up to date with everything we do, particularly if you hit the notification bell as well. Either way though, many thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time for another video.